How's it going? How's it going? My name is Logan. You are on the Tide&TarRC channel. Today I have a Traxxas two-wheel drive brushed slash that has been sitting for almost a decade without moving. So it definitely, you can see it. It definitely looks dirty. It looks like it's been sitting for almost a decade. It's pretty much just been in a garage. And today we're going to go through and we're going to take all the things that need to be adjusted, take all those things apart. I got a few parts for it here to make it run. I'm not going to do like any kind of upgrades to it. I'm going to bring it back to its original stock form, just because I think it'd be pretty cool to just have to rebuild a bone stock slash. You know, you don't see a lot of just bone stock of brushed two-wheel drive slashes. They're all crazy four-wheel drive brushless trucks, which makes sense because they're a lot faster, more reliable. We're not here to do that. We're here to rebuild it. So let's get to it. First thing we're going to start off with is taking these pins out. There's just a few pins to take off. You got one there, and then one there, and one there. And the whole body comes off. And then as you can see, this body's been sitting, this truck's been sitting for a while. I mean, she is dirty. On this truck though, we got the wheels, we got battery, ESC, motor, and we're mostly going to just take a look at replace the shock holder on the shocks, front and rear, replace the battery, replace the motor. And then first thing we're going to do is we're going to unplug this battery. This is the old one. It's been sitting for over a decade, so you know it's bad. And then we're looking at this old motor. This is the new one. It's a 12-turn 550 Titan motor. It's a stock original one. First thing we're going to end up doing is taking these wheels off. You know, just the simple hex. And then we're going to end up taking this cover off for the pinion and spur gear. So we've got the stocks, pinion, and spur gear on there right now. We're going to take the spur gear off first. It's just this hex and then a spring. You got to make sure you hold down on the spur gear to engage the clutch. And then for now, we're not going to take off the pinion gear just because it actually fit through the hole. We can do that later. So we're going to focus on these two motor screws right here. And that is the old one. She's dusty, she's crusty, and she is definitely dead. If you listen closely, you can actually hear it start to crunch. But that's why we got the new one. There's the new one. She's shiny. She's ready to go in. First thing we need to do though is take this pinion gear off. That's just a little hex. Break that guy loose. And then it just comes right off. And the whole thing just slides out. That is the old one. You just throw the old one away. She's done. She's garbage. We're going to put the new pinion on. We're going to make sure we put blue Loctite on it because I don't want this thing coming out. We're going to just start it a little bit so it's easier to get on. And then we're just going to slide it back on. And then tighten it just enough so it won't go anywhere, but not too much because we'll probably have to change it later. We're going to throw the motor screws back in. Not tighten them, but just enough to keep it still. This is the old clutch plate. So you see how there's a ring side and there's a rough side. You're going to want that rough side out so the pads actually have something to grip onto. It's already scuffed up and ready to go. So you're going to want the rings inside and the rough side outside. We're going to slide that back in. And then just make sure you have all your clutch material in there and your bearings. We're actually going to replace the bearings. Why not? Because we're already in here. Alright, I'm just going to slide it back on. Tighten her back up. Next, we're going to fix this gap. So to fix this gap, you're going to want a piece of paper about that size, and you're going to put it in between. Then you're going to pinch it together. You're going to tighten it, and then we're just going to push it on through, just like that. And what you want is what that looks like right there. That's perfect. And then you just tighten the screws back up. And she's good to go. Now we got the new battery here. This is just a new 3000 milliamp nickel metal battery from Traxxas. Throw in there, plug it in just to test it. This is the old crusty remote. As you can hear, she's still grinding. She is still making noise. Why is it making noise? I have no idea. But we're gonna have to go back and tear into it and see what the problem is. First things first, we gotta undo everything we just did. So, the cover, spur gear, pinion gear, motor comes out, all that fun stuff, unplugging the motor. Just redoing everything, because why not? That is the new fancy one we just took out. Next thing we're doing is we are taking out these screws for the rear bumper. There should be 4 of them to take out. And then the whole thing just pops right out. Just like that. She's old, she's dusty. And then we're going to take the body mounts off, which in this case is just 4 screws, and the whole thing just pops off. And then we're going to move on to the shock tower, which again is 4 screws. 2 of them go into the chassis, 2 of them go into the transmission. Once those are done, the whole thing pops right out, and then we can actually move on to the control arm screws. You need to grab that guy out, and there she is. And then we're going to move on to the next one. And that's the other one. Now it is pretty much time to take this whole piece off once this axle on the right side comes off. Whole piece just comes off. We're not going to really touch any of that just to keep it simple. And then there are 6 total screws on the bottom. There are 4 big ones and 2 small ones. We're going to each individually take those screws out. Those are the ones that just hold the transmission to the actual chassis itself. That is number 4 of the big ones. Moving on to the small ones. And now that those are off, we are pretty much good to go to just grab this whole thing and lift it up. And just like that, easy enough, not too hard. We gotta take this piece of tape off, and then there's a little set screw just like that that goes into each of the axles. We're just gonna take each of those guys out. And then both axles are ready to come out. Now we have 6 total screws holding the 2 sides of the transmission together. We're going to take each of those guys off. And she just pulls right apart. You just got to be careful you don't lose any of the bearings, the gears, and you're good to go. Well, we're going to take each of those gears out. The bearings actually look really good for how old this thing is. I think that's just because it wasn't used that much. But the grease is pretty dirty in there, so we're going to go in there and clean that. There's the diff, there's more idler gears. That is the differential, and we're going to go ahead and take that apart and clean that out, because I'm wondering if that's not what's ticking. So those 4 screws right there. And then we have gears on the inside, which looks pretty dirty, so we're going to go ahead and take all that apart. And just like that, it's all taken apart. Now we're going to go ahead and clean it. Okay, and now it is all nice and cleaned, or at least the best I can do. Gears are all nice and cleaned, everything's cleaned. And we're just going to throw it back together. And now that everything's back together, I'm going to put some 50,000 weight diff fluid in here from Traxxas. I like to fill it all up, leave as the least amount of space in there as possible. And then we're going to throw the cap back on, tighten it all down, test it a little bit, and she should be good. And with all the screws tight, she is working just like she's supposed to. Let's move on to the next thing. With the transmission covers all nice and clean, I threw some more bearings in there, some new bearings, put all the gears back in there, back where they're supposed to be. And at each step, I'm making sure that everything works the way it's supposed to. I don't hear any clicking sound. Now I'm going to throw the diff in there. I don't hear any clicks. That's good to go. Let's throw some lube in there. Get it all nice and lubed up. And then we're going to throw the other side of the cover back on. And throw some tape on the bottom and get going. Alright, now it's time to get these 6 screws back in there, so we're going to go ahead one by one. I'm going to tighten them all down till they touch, go through each and every one of them, and then once they're all flush, I go back through and I retighten all of them just to make sure that they're fully set and tightened. And with that being done, all nice and clean, got the tape on the bottom. Let's go throw the axles back on there and put it back in there. But first off, we got to make sure that the bottom is nice and clean just to keep everything clean. It's already off, might as well clean it. We're going to throw those 6 screws back in there, but I like to put one down first. Tighten it all up so it's not going to fall, and then go ahead and thread the rest of them back in. And with that being done, I'm going to go through, I like to clean everything as I'm going, just because I can really get into spaces you can't get to. So I'm going to clean the axles up, throw those back in there. I'm not going to worry about Loctiting those because it's plastic on plastic. And before I bring all the shock tower assembly and the shocks and control arms, everything back on there, I'm going to make sure I clean everything up. Just because, again, I'm here, I might as well clean it. You know, I can get to all the spaces I can't get to before. Make it look all nice and pretty. Now that's done, I'm going to throw that shock tower back on there and put those 4 bolts back in. Now with those around, I'm going to throw the control arm screws back in. And then now it's time to throw that motor back in. So I got the 2 set screws back in there, throw the clutch plate on, and the actual clutch on, and the spring, and then the nut, and then tighten it all down again. And then throw the cover back on that I ended up cleaning. And then now I'm going to go through and clean the rear bumper, just because again I'm here.
Throw that back on, put the 4 screws back on. I'll throw the body mounts back on. Now it's time for the fun part. I like to spray everything with WD-40. I found that works best. People have their own preferences, but to me WD-40 just works better. And then I use a cloth towel, get in there and clean it all up. Make it look nice and purty, just like new. I'm going to go ahead and clean the underside, get that all looking nice and purty. Now moving on to put new shock oil in the shocks. So I'm just doing the front shocks for now. I'm not going to do the rear shocks because the front shocks are the worst. I'm going to be putting a 30 weight FT shock oil in there. So when you do shocks, you got to make sure that when you're pushing the actual shaft in, it actually pops back out like a quarter distance of what it actually extends to. That's how you know you have the correct amount of oil in there. Throw everything back together, it feels good. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, now this shock's good. We are ready to throw everything back together. Throw it all back on the truck and start putting it back together. Now both front shocks are working as they're supposed to. Throw the wheels back on there. I'm gonna throw the battery back in there, plug it all back in. I'm just gonna make sure everything works. And as you can hear, no more grinding. So whatever we fixed, whether it was the diff or the transmission, whatever we did, worked. Put everything back together and make sure it drives like it's supposed to. Looks like everything we did to this little truck helped. After sitting for almost a decade, it is now up and running again. Working better than ever, just like new. Looks really good, drives really good. Brand new motor, brand new battery, new shock oil, rebuilt transmission, all cleaned up. She's looking pretty. And I'd say this was a success. Thanks everyone for watching. This is the Tide&TarRC channel, and you guys have a good one.